Welcome to my super type A attempt at being Zen, the podcast. My name is Risha York, and I will be your host. If you are overworked, overtired, overstretched, overwhelmed, and just over it, you are in the right place. We like to say we are currently working towards Zen-ish. I'm thrilled that you've joined us. Let's see who will be supporting us on our path to Zen today. Welcome to part 2 of my chat with Lauren Miller. I hope you enjoyed part 1. Let's jump right in to our discussion around the pace of life, patience, and expectations. And we operate at a pace we've never operated at before. People are expected to work 12-hour days. People are expected to be, 100% available all the time. I have days where I'm like, forget cell phones. Let's go back in time to the 80s where it was stuck to the wall. And if someone didn't pick up, they weren't dead. They weren't,
It's a great point. We didn't have to send out a search party if you weren't responding to your texts.
Like, it was no big deal. It was like, I sent you a letter and I heard back 3 months later. And that was fully acceptable, right? I phoned you, I left a message on your answering machine, and you called me the next day. Like, it wasn't so immediate. So, and speaking of instant gratification, like, it's at the point now where just no one has any patience. Right?
Yeah.
And having to rebuild that is infuriating when you're obsessed with efficiency. Right? Because if you're like, well, we can do it faster. It can happen faster. Let's do it better, faster, faster, better. And we can go down that rabbit hole forever until it literally kills us.
And I was just talking about this with somebody, and we're saying, even if you are more efficient, if I can do my work in 5 hours instead of like 9, because I'm just like really in it and I'm just really focused, I do not get rewarded for that by being like, oh, go spend the rest of your day like as you wish. You just get more work.
Yeah. But here's the question. Why not though? Like, why can't my super type A friends do a 9-hour workday in 5 hours and check out?
Like, because society tells us that we can't.
Yeah, I don't like it, right? Like,
I don't like it either.
I think this is why we're seeing so many of the younger generation being like, screw that. I'm not doing 9 to 5. I'm going to run my own show and then I can work whenever. It's like Timothy Ferriss with his 4-hour work week. Have you read that one? That was really inspiring for me. And I was like, this is brilliant. There's some caveats, obviously, but I thought, you really setting boundaries around your space. Like, I had just come from a place where I was working, 10-hour days easily, and in a business that didn't belong to me. And then another 6 hours in a business that did belong to me. That work felt different. Right? And then when I worked for someone else, also, I was so hyper functioning that by the end, I was doing the job of 10 people. And they end up going back and rejigging the whole setup to try and accommodate the workload. Well, yeah, I'm capable of running at that speed, but I shouldn't.
Yeah.
Right?
Just because I can doesn't mean I should.
Exactly. And, in Nedra's book, Set Boundaries, Find Peace, she talks about that. Part of your responsibility in the workforce is to say, that's too much work. I can't do that. I can't do that much work. but we're all rewarded for being hyper efficient and hyper
Yeah.
functioning. So it's like, well, if you can't, she will until I kill her.
It's no, it's true. It's like, well, if you can't, okay, we'll find someone who can.
Yeah. And
And
so I
it's
think
just,
like we have to rethink the whole work scenario. We have to come at it from another angle completely. Task driven, check boxes, sure. I don't think every job is about being in a place for 9 hours.
no, it shouldn't
So,
be.
right. And the people who like, yeah, I just want to be in a place for 9 hours. Great. You have that job. Right. I don't. For me, that makes me crazy because it's too much. And then I take on more work because I'm bored.
Yeah.
Right. And now I'm hyper functioning and now I'm overachieving and now I'm doing too much. And now I leave and they can't replace me because they have to replace me with 8 people. This
Yeah.
just happened to a client of mine this week. She left her job and they replaced her with 2 people. And she was like,
Well,
wow. And I was like, no, that's right.
we're seeing that so much in medicine and particularly in family medicine. Like my mom's a GP and the thousands of patients. Like most family doctors carry thousands of patients.
Right.
And part of the reason that they're having such a hard time retiring is that because new grads are like, actually, I don't want to work like 12 hours a day and then go home and do all my paperwork and then on the weekend have to come in and all of these things and
Yeah,
honestly
no.
there is like a big, I mean, I'm not in that line of work, but when I hear it, I feel attacked. I'm like, what? I feel less than, or that my morals are like out of order because I don't want to like spend 80 hours a week working.
Well, yeah,
And
especially when you're in the service of people.
mm,
So I think this becomes, especially for people who are empathetic, like if compassion is one of your top values, that's what's led you to the work you're doing, right? And you're so compassionate and you're so empathetic and you're feeling and you want to help. You want to help, which is why you chose the profession, right? But the thing is not to your own detriment. And that's the part I
yeah,
think people don't get. It's sort of like, but I'm a doctor. I vowed to do this. Yes, cool, but not to the point where it kills you, not to the point where you're so stressed out you can't function, not to the point where you go home and check out from the universe because you can't function.
yeah.
That's too much,
And like
right?
sometimes we just need to hear it from somebody else. Because
Yeah.
if it's only us, it's like, well, it's just me. There's something wrong with me.
Yeah. And how
And like
often
it,
have you told yourself as someone who's type A, like, just rally. I've got this. Just
yeah,
rally, dig deep.
well, I guess this will pass. It's gonna be fine.
Yeah, everything is
Um,
temporary. I can
yeah,
do this for short bursts, but that's the thing. Short bursts.
yeah.
Yes.
And then people start to expect it all of the time.
You can't run a marathon at a sprint. That's not possible.
Yeah. And then you're off on disability and there's no production.
Right. And so your body will tell you. I mean, that's the one thing I
Yeah.
learned from my mother getting Parkinson's. My mother like was so hyper functioning and she had so many jobs and she was a therapist and she ran the detox and she did workshops at universities and she was like everywhere all the time doing all the things. And then when she got diagnosed with Parkinson's, she was looking for all the answers and became her own research assistant, essentially, trying to figure out like how do we cure Parkinson's? And I was like, wow. I mean, it's really inspiring. And at the same time, it's like, do you think part of this nerve disease that can be, made worse through oxidized stress
Mm.
has something to do with the fact that you are not capable of stopping or slowing down.
It's interesting that you say that. My mom recently was diagnosed with breast cancer and similarly like extremely high functioning, extremely productive, like but the same thing, she has become, her own advocate to the point of like needing to become an expert, and we've talked about this actually, and I was like, Mom, like I wonder how much of this knowledge seeking is an attempt to gain some control over a situation in which there's so much uncertainty.
Because you have no control. Like when you're sick, your body's going to tell you, I can't work
Yeah,
like this anymore.
yeah.
Right.
And which she said to me, knowledge is power, Lauren. And I was like, oh God, okay. Oh man.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
so
funny though, actually, that you should say that, because in my work, I use this temperament theory, and it breaks it down into 4 different temperaments. And one of them, which tends to be the kind of people who go into medicine, is their top value above everything else is knowledge and competence.
mm,
Knowledge and competence. And so that's what puts them in that perfectionism space too, and also can get stuck in this analysis paralysis, because it's like, it has to be perfect. It has to be this. I have to know all of the information before I can move forward.
that phrase is like so triggering for me. Um, like I don't know if you saw my face. I was like,
Yeah.
when I played varsity basketball, that was like one of the things that I was told by coaching was like, Miller, like you got to shut your brain off. Like you just need to like stop thinking about it. Like it's just like paralysis by analysis. And I literally couldn't. I was just like too in my head. I was too worked up.
Yeah.
And it's true. Like the more you try and control everything, and then you can't do anything.
Yeah. And
Is
it's
exactly
funny, the
what it
more I
was.
meet people who are this temperament type too, the more I'm like, okay, this is a huge get out of your own way situation. This is learned behavior, and I understand why you're doing it. Like, no one's mad, right? And in fact, it's great when you meet these types of people to also lean into that skill, because I am not that person. I am not an analysis paralysis person. So if it's something really important and I know I can't do that, I don't really have patience to do the research. Now, in the past, would I have? 100%, I would have. But I have someone in my house who loves to do it. So why me?
Use the resources.
Right? Use the resources, spread the joy, let them help, right? And so that just works out better. And there's a great story actually. So we had to insulate our basement. And I was like, yeah, we're going to do spray foam. And my husband's like, whoa, 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 hold on. Like, why are you choosing that? I'm like, because it's the best value. It's the best. We're going to call a guy, because to do it ourselves, we're not experts. It's about $980. It's 1,100 for them to come and do it. Like, we're going to call the guy. He's going to come in. He's going to get her done. Well, hold on, Risha. I want to just look into it. I'm like, oh God, here we go. Okay, cool. You look into it. 2 weeks. He spent 2 weeks researching every different kind of insulation, what you can put into it, what makes more sense if you're near the water, because we're near the water. You don't want that insulation to get wet. What if it leaks? Like, whatever. Research, research, research. He comes back. Okay. All right. So we're going to do spray foam insulation. I was like, yeah, I'm well aware. Right? Like that
You're
was
like, I do you
you're
remember
you're
when
2 weeks
I
behind me. Like, it's cool. And even this morning, he's like, I'm not fast enough for you. And I'm like, sometimes you're not.
there's a happy medium in
That's
there.
okay. I'm not asking you to be. I operate at this pace. Do I get frustrated and annoyed? Yeah, I do. But that's my problem, not yours.
Okay, and that's another thing that was life altering for me. Like in therapy one day, I was like, I don't know who, Lord knows what I was complaining about that day, but I will never forget when she said, like, Lauren, what you just told me is not like objectively is not problematic. Like there is nothing wrong with you. There is nothing wrong with the way that like that you dress, that you do your hair. Like there's nothing wrong with that. She's like, if somebody has a problem with that, that is their problem. And that is
Yeah.
not your responsibility to manage their discomfort. And
Yeah.
I was like,
Yeah.
not?
What a game changer, right?
Oh
I mean,
my
because I think
gosh.
when we're empathetic, The last thing our goal is to cause someone else discomfort or frustration or make them feel bad. Like, that is the last thing I want on this planet. My intentions, never that, right?
Mm,
But if
yeah.
you take something about me and now you're uncomfortable or you aren't happy, or and I'm just being 100% myself and true to my values, then it's actually not my problem so much as
Yeah.
it's yours.
And then it goes back to the values. Like if I didn't know that like showing up in the world as my authentic self was the most important thing in the world to me, like maybe that wouldn't be my hill to die on,
Yeah.
but it is. Like
Yeah.
that is like I need this to be happy in life.
Yeah.
And I set boundaries with my parents. So my hair used to be like to my shoulders, and I cut it when I graduated because I was like, new life phase. Like I've kind of always
Yeah.
wondered
Something
what.
different.
Yeah, and I was so scared to tell my parents, like, I am like an adult. I am a full doctor now. I'm like, how am I gonna tell them that I'm gonna cut my hair? So I finally tell them, and I had just listened to the podcast. I can't remember if it was either Glennon Doyle or like Brene Brown. I can't remember which, but and they talked about boundaries, and they said, oh, this it was definitely Brene Brown because it's my new mantra. It's like clear is kind, unclear is unkind. Like let people know what is okay and let them know what's not, and like
Yes.
those are your boundaries. And so in like the days before, I sent them a text. I was like, listen guys, I'm cutting my hair. I've thought about it a lot. I am excited about it. I know that you're not going to be excited about it, and it's okay if you don't like it. It's okay if you wish that I wouldn't do it. It's okay if you bitch about it to your friends.
Yeah.
It is not okay to talk about it in front of me. It is not okay to make me feel bad about it.
Yeah.
You can do that. You can't do that with me. And that was like, I think one of the first times in my life that I set like a really
Clear
explicit and
boundary.
firm boundary. And it
Yeah.
just like, oh my God, it felt so
Doesn't it
good.
feel amazing?
Yeah. Oh my,
It
and
really
it
does.
just, oh, I
It's
didn't have
life
to
changing. And I mean,
micromanage.
I feel really lucky because I was raised by a therapist. There was a lot of moments in my life where she would say, "Hold on. This is one of those moments where you set a boundary." And I'd be like, "Eh," right? And she's like, "This is one of those moments where you say, 'No, that's not okay. I do not accept that behavior. I will not stay for that.'" And I was like, "I can do that?" She's like, "100% you can do that," right? And so throughout life, I'd have these moments where I'm like, I don't know, like this is what's happening. And she's like, Risha, I think you do know, right? And now I hear her voice all the time. It'll be like, okay, this is one of those moments where you set a boundary, right? And it was really, it takes practice.
Yes.
And also, Nedra Tawwab in her book says this beautiful thing: you're not going to be able to set boundaries without guilt, but you can do it in a way where you don't feel overwhelming guilt. Like you
Yeah.
can, because you're going to have that twang, that moment where you go, this is going to make them feel bad. But the results are so much worth it, right? It's like I've said to people
Yeah.
before, I'm not comfortable having this conversation. And it changed the dynamic of the relationship for the better, right? Or
Yeah.
someone said something hurtful or upset to me, and I say, that's unacceptable, what you just said. That's really manipulative. And they're like, oh. And I'm like,
I had a similar thing too recently. I had a friend, meant well, like
yeah,
I had been in like a like very long-term relationship, and that had just ended, and she reached out, was like, I'm so sorry, like I hope you're doing well, da da da. And was like, myself and like so and so just went through this, and like if you really want to talk about it. And like this was somebody that they had met like pretty recently, like it was like a few months. Not that it wasn't meaningful, not
no,
that it
yeah,
has to be
no,
years long.
100%. Just trying to be helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, and I knew that. I knew that. And I didn't respond right away. And then like half an hour later, they texted me and said, "Oh my gosh, like I'm so sorry. Like I just heard it. Like they're not the same situation. Like I didn't mean it like that, you know."
Yeah.
And I thought about it and I was like, I could say, oh, like don't worry about it, whatever. But I have decided like one of the things that is important to me is apologizing when it is warranted and also like genuinely acknowledging when somebody else apologizes. So I said
Yeah.
like I was like, I really appreciate you reaching out, and I also really appreciate like you apologizing. It did hurt my feelings a bit that you compared like our two situations. It felt a little bit invalidating for me. I know you didn't mean it that way.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm grateful that you are the kind of friend that I can be this honest with and like feel safe to do so.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah.
feel like an older version or a younger version, I guess, of me would have just been like, oh yeah, no, whatever, it's fine, haha. But I
Right.
was like, no, like I owe this person like the truth. And I was like, yeah, that did upset me. That did feel like an oversight. Um, and I really appreciate that you took the time to say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I think we don't do that enough. Like we don't apologize enough, and we also don't acknowledge apologies
Oh,
enough.
accountability is like one of those things. I will admit I came late to the accountability party, okay? I get it. I was probably in my mid-20s before I realized it's not all about who's to blame. It really took me a long time to realize it. And I mean, shockingly, honestly, I blame the fact that I'm an only child. But it's one of those things where it's like, it's not my fault. It's not my fault. And it's funny because as soon as I just dropped it, I actually had this great mentor that I worked with when I worked in IT. And she said to me, the problem is that we spend so much time trying to figure out who's to blame, and we don't spend that time just fixing the problem. We don't have time for the blame game. We just need someone to take accountability and fix it. And I was like, fair, okay, I can do that. I can easily step into my leadership shoes and say, I got this. I don't know how
Yeah.
it happened, but I got it. I'll take it on as mine. The problem is, I think, that once it's kind of addicting, especially as someone who's type A, to be like, I'll take on that problem. I'll take on that problem and I'll save the world, right?
Hero complex.
Oh, it's so bad. And then we take on all the problems. We want to solve all the issues. And so for me, I came late to the party and I felt like I had to make up for the fact that I was always shirking the blame before. So I
Hmm.
took all the blame. It was me. Blame me. I'll do it. I'll fix it. And so there was this like window of time in my late 20s where I was like, fine, yeah, my problem. I'll take it. Fine, yeah, blame me. Me. And now I'm like, no, no, hold on. We don't even need to talk about blame anymore. I think it's not productive, and as
Yeah.
type A, I love productivity. So let's not, right? So
Yeah.
let's just throw the whole blame thing out the window and just really embrace accountability. What am I accountable for? Right?
Yeah.
I'm responsible for my children. I'm accountable for my behavior and how I show up in this world, right?
Yeah.
Everything else is not really my problem.
It's true. It
And
like a
that's
very
that's a lot to swallow when you want to save the world.
and we really do want to save the world. We
Don't we
do.
all?
Yeah. But it was like shit's gonna happen. Like people are gonna get hurt. It's inevitable. It's not about like, is this going to happen? It's how are we going to move through it?
How are you going to work on it, right? And I mean that's the thing, like when you talk about, how do you know, reframe your thoughts? How do you have these moments where you're like, oh, I'm going to kill this person. They made me so angry. And then it's like, okay, but hold on, stop, stop, stop. Why is it triggering you? How do you reframe this, right? How do you think of it from a point of view as like, if the first thought that goes through my mind is like, oh, he doesn't respect my time because, you know, I asked him to be ready for this time and he's ready 5 minutes late.
Yeah.
Okay. Or that's not even in his brain. Like maybe we think of that from a whole other perspective. How else can I flip that and think about it?
Yeah,
Right.
the different perspectives.
And I mean, I think you don't know what's going on in other people's heads. And I think it takes us to a place where we talk more about giving people grace, understanding, not expecting everyone to operate at this level just because you operate at this level. That's not fair.
Yeah.
Right.
I was just in a leadership course, just through residency, and one of the topics was resilience. And there's like assigned readings, and you are in this like discussion board, and I like ended up like getting on my soapbox, and I was like, I'm gonna turn this into a blog. And I did, and they give all these like definitions of resilience, and one one thing that I realized that at least for me that was missing, like the biggest piece of my like what makes me resilient is like my self-compassion, and is like my ability to give myself grace.
Forgive yourself.
Because yeah, and just give myself permission to get it wrong. And like that's another, I'm just like a walking like Brene Brown does like not pay me to say these things. But she says like, I'm not here to be right. I'm here to get it right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think that's part of it. Like, you know, I think it's easy when you naturally are good at things, when you pick stuff up really quickly, when you're resourceful, when you move quickly and are efficient, and your brain just functions like that. Is it a benefit? Yes, but it also can be a big barrier between you and other people. Like my mom used to say, "Oh, I don't suffer fools well." And I always loved that. It made me laugh because I was like, I can appreciate that. Like when when you have those moments, and I say this all the time because one of our temperaments in my toolbox, what they value more than anything, and this tends to be our super type A people, so listen up, friends. What they value above everything else is responsibility and belonging. Above everything else, responsibility and belonging. And that responsibility feels like the weight of the whole world. And so if you walk into the door saying, everything is my responsibility, I'm going to carry it all, and then you're surrounded by people who their value is not responsibility and they don't care about belonging, then you feel overwhelmed with this sense that you're surrounded by fools. Right? I'm
Yeah.
surrounded by idiots. I'm surrounded by people who can't do this. So I have to hold it all up here. I have to hold it all.
Yeah.
That's exhausting, firstly. Secondly, it requires a shift in perspective. These people aren't fools. Right? They're
I
not
love that
fools.
it is our default. It's like, must be you. Can't be
Yeah,
me.
right? They're not fools. They have a completely different worldview than you. Also, you're not the only one who values responsibility and belonging. There's so many of us. So please stop trying to carry the whole universe by yourself. There are
Yeah.
lots of us out here. And if you need to take a rest, take a rest.
Yeah. We need to glorify like rest. And people are like, oh, like I'm so like people say like, oh, I didn't do anything today. I was so unproductive. I'm like, rest is productive.
Yeah.
Restoration.
Yeah. I mean,
Uh,
rest is something I'm still learning. I'm not going to lie. Since it's been just over 10 years, I'm so much better at it than I once was. But it took me a long time to figure out what was actually restorative for me,
mhm.
which is different than other people. Like sometimes reorganizing a closet is restorative for me. It makes me feel good and it looks pretty. And I feel like relaxed and calm afterwards. And that does something for me.
Yeah.
Is it productive? Yeah, but like it's also really relaxing.
And I think that like there's also flexibility in that. Like what's restorative for you is not necessarily what's restorative for me, and what's restorative for me today is not necessarily what's restorative for me tomorrow. So like
Exactly.
I like when like I got up this morning, went to the gym before work, like feeling great, love it. Like that's kind of my thing. But like yesterday, I feel like shit. And I
Yeah.
was like, you know what? Like today, I need to sleep. I
Yeah.
need the extra sleep. And like truly, like everything does come back to self-compassion. It's like
Yeah.
I am not a failure because I have changed my plan because of the way that my body is telling me it feels. Like that flexibility, that adaptability is what allows me to stay well. It
Yeah,
doesn't
I
have to be
agree.
like regimented.
I also call it the the bubble bath conundrum. So you're like, "Oh, I'm so tired." "Oh, have a bubble bath." Like it's the first thing that comes out of people's mouths. And I'm like, "Do you know what it's like when you put someone who's hyper functioning in a bubble bath?"
I do.
Like, yeah, like it's relaxing for maybe 8 minutes,
No, that's generous.
right? And then you're like, "What can I do? What can I plan? How can I do this?" Like my brain goes on overdrive. And so it's funny because my husband will say something to me like, "Oh, are you rewatching a show?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Why are you doing that?" I'm like, "It's so relaxing. Like I know what's going to happen. It's really chill. It makes me feel all the feels because I'm highly empathetic in the way that I want to feel them.
Hmm.
I've chosen this program specifically because of how it makes me feel, right? And he's like, "I don't know how you do that." It helps make me feel warm and snuggly, and it puts my brain in a space where I can shut it off because it's paying attention to that,
Yeah.
right? That's self-care for me. Whereas some people might say, like, no screen time, no, like, you do you, man. There's no judgment coming from me. If you need to binge watch The Office to feel
Have
good,
at her. And
do
again,
it.
it's that self-awareness piece. Like
Yeah.
paying it that it like mindfulness. I mean, I personally don't subscribe to like I'm gonna sit and meditate for 20 minutes a day. Like if you do, great. That works for you, great. Like for me, it's more like moment to moment, like being like conscious of like
Yeah.
how I am feeling and noticing what comes up for me and like responding in the moment. That's what it means to me.
Yeah.
And then that dictates like what do I need. But again, if you're not paying attention, if you're not self-aware,
You
then you're
might
never
need
going to
that
know what
10
you're
minutes in the
needing.
moment, right? Like you're in the morning. If you run at a freight train pace, you might need that 10 minutes in the morning to check in with yourself or at night or whenever it is. I mean, it's funny how many people um talk about, "Oh, I can't meditate. It's too hard." And I'm like, it literally can happen anywhere at any time and there's no wrong way to do it. And it's something I talk about a lot to my super type A clients because they're like, "No, no, I couldn't. It's not for me." Okay, well, so throw on like a Deepak Chopra guided meditation for 5 minutes, 5 minutes, just so you spend 5 minutes paying attention to something other than the hamster wheel in your head.
Yeah.
5 minutes to put you in your body, to take some deep breaths, to activate that parasympathetic nerve system. 5 minutes. Like it really doesn't take more than that. And it's funny when I do it consistently, the benefits I see versus when I'm not doing it at all, the short wick I have.
And like a lot of those the way you're describing that and the things that it does, like that is how CrossFit makes me feel, which people will like
Yeah.
have opinions about that, and that's fine, but like there's nowhere else like in the world that my brain shuts off the
Right.
way that it does when I'm in the middle of workout.
And this is it. Finding the thing that does that for you.
Yeah.
Finding that thing. I like swimming for that reason. I love to swim. I like the calmness of it. I like how it's gentle. I like how my body doesn't hurt when I do it. I like all of that. I like the water, I like how I'm not sweating. I don't like getting sweaty. I don't want to be sweaty. I want to be in water floating gently, calm, right? I love that whole thing. Now, I also love that when you get sweaty in a pool, it's like an immediate bath. So like you don't feel gross. But that's like a me thing. That does it for me. And I've done that to the point where like I've hurt myself, like swam 2 hours of laps because I needed to process something, and then came out and was like, oh my God, someone get me a burrito. I'm starving. Right.
My sugars are low.
But man, did it ever help? So knowing what supports your mental health, what helps you disconnect and process information, just knowing those things, right? So I have time for one more question, and
Okay.
what is your concept of Zen and how do you find it? Because it kind of ties into that.
It does. Okay, I have to, you know me, and like, well, I feel like you know me now, and like
Yeah.
I have to be on my definitions because I don't want to mess it up. But oh my God, that felt very like type A of me. But um, um, but
We
for
all forgive
me,
you because we all understand.
you gotta cut that out.
No, it's too
For
perfect. It's too perfect.
for me, like when I think of Zen, like it's it's feeling like tranquility, which is a word that I learned recently from Brene, of course. And okay, I'm so the definition, the research that this is evidence-based, folks. So tranquility is associated with the absence of demand and no pressure to do anything.
Oh, doesn't that sound so nice?
Yes, and then she distinguishes like the difference between content and tranquil. And
Yeah.
it says, with contentment, we often have the sense of having completed something. With tranquility, we relish the feeling of doing nothing.
Nothing.
And
Do
like
you go to
that,
a place? Like, is there a place in your mind where you go where you feel that feeling?
like, yeah, like kind of what I said before, for me, it's the gym.
Yeah.
Or for me, like just being in nature. And like
Yeah.
there's no cars. Or I'm like on my surfboard and I'm just like floating. I'm like, oh my God, life is just so beautiful.
Yeah. I'm
You
all
know,
about
just
water. For me, it's like always a water thing. Like we live in cottage country in northern Ontario. It's gorgeous. We made that choice, that lifestyle choice. We
mhm,
were spending so much money every year going to the cottage, and
right.
we were like, what are we doing? So we had a big long conversation about the kind of lifestyle we were looking for, and I said exactly this, and this was after my mom's Parkinson diagnosis, and I was a little
Mhm,
spun and trying to figure out, how do you slow yourself down when you live in the busiest city in Canada? Like we were at Yonge and Eglinton in Toronto, and it was go go go, high anxiety, and I was like, how do I change my entire environment? And the answer was, you change your entire environment. So we left and we moved 90 minutes north, and we live on the water. And I was adamant, like, it has to be on the water. And real estate agents were like, you're bonkers. We're not finding the thing you want in your budget on the water, like, not happening. And I was like, yes, we will. Yes, we will. Like, it's going to happen. And we did. Because I kept hitting refresh on realtor.ca like every three
You were on
minutes
it.
until it came up, and I was like, there it is, that's my house, right? Message my real estate agent, I want to see this today. And she's like, okay, calm down. It literally got posted like 3 minutes ago. I'm like, right? I have to see it. And now I have this amazing advantage to find this tranquility, specifically for me in the summer months, where I can go out at lunch and sit in the middle of a lake and just be.
Yeah,
And no one's around. It's so quiet. And it's
sounds
quiet up
amazing.
here in the winter too, but I am not a cold human. So I got myself a hot tub for the backyard. So it's the same idea. I like go out in the winter, sit, and it's so quiet. And no
I
one needs anything from me.
for me, that's like, it's like the end of the workout and I'm laying on the floor and like my feet are on the wall so that like the blood could come back to my heart. And I'm like intentionally like bringing my heart rate down and like my brain is not. And it's kind of, it's just, again, like different people,
Yeah.
different strategies, but like the same core
It's the same result,
concepts.
right? And I think knowing what does that for you, that's like
Yeah.
more than half the battle.
I would say like that is like the summary, this like if I could like give a one-liner of kind of everything that we've talked about, it's that like the most important thing is like knowing yourself, like know who you are,
Yeah.
know what's important to you, what are your non-negotiables, what are the boundaries that are hard and firm for you, like
Yeah.
what are the things that make you feel good, like you need to know yourself, and then you need to put yourself in an environment in which you are surrounded by people who either also bring that or who support you in
Or honor
achieving
it.
that. Because, yeah, you are a product of your environment.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so get clear about who you are and then be intentional with who you and what you surround yourself with.
Yeah. 100%. That's a great point. That's a great point. I'm so glad you joined me today, Lauren. Honestly, it's been a real gift. And I look forward to being able to chat again in the future. I don't know how or why or for what purpose, but we're going to make it happen because you're just lovely.
I could talk
And
to you forever.
I know, I love it. I love it. And, I really have appreciated your insights here today. And I think it's something that the audience is really going to appreciate too, because it's so relatable. Like we're all going through it. We're all in different stages at different points, but the stress is the same stress,
Yeah.
right? So finding a way, even as our super type A selves, towards that space of Zen, finding our direction. That's the whole thing. It's the journey, not the destination, right?
Trust the process.
Trust the process. So how many more cliches can we throw in at the end? But anyways, it's good. We've got this. We've got this. But yeah, I really appreciate you joining me. And thank you so much for being my first guest on the podcast. And
It's my honor, truly. Thank you
I
so much for having me.
I
It's
really
been,
hope to connect again soon.
yes, me as well. Well, thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe to our channel wherever you listen to podcasts. Visit www.yorkmotivational.com for more information on my Super Type A Attempt at Being Zen, the coaching program, Lead Without Permission, or visit our contact page to reach out to Risha. Wishing you all continued balance and fulfillment on your road to Zen.